Hello, I'm Michelle Jorgensen, and this is the Mount Mahogany Stakes Self-Reliance video. Today we're going to be talking about light and heat, which is kind of funny since it's June and we're in the middle of the summer. You're probably not worried about heat right now. But in an emergency, light and heat would be the two first things that you would actually be thinking about. We did a Pioneer weekend once, and it was really fun. We turned off all the electricity in our house, everything. And what I was noticing at first was how quiet it was. There are a lot of things humming and buzzing in our houses all the time. But then the other thing we noticed is how dark it was and how we rely on, we'd walk into a room and we'd flip a switch. Even though we knew that it wasn't on, we didn't know it wasn't on. Our bodies were so used to just flipping the switch. So we are so accustomed to just having light all the time in our houses that it would be really an interesting change for us to have no light. And we were really going to have to learn how to do things differently. So let's talk about those two things, light and heat. And on the opposite end of heat is actually how to keep cool, how to keep not too hot. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. All right. Oftentimes when we're talking about light and heat, we're talking about open flames, because if we don't have electricity, we need some way to heat or light without the electricity. So we're talking about an open flame. There are 3 rules that are so important about open flames. The first is to never leave it unattended, especially if you have children. There have been so many accidents, so many tragic things have happened from unattended candles, even in today's world where we don't have to depend on them, just candles that we leave out for smelling or whatever it is. And little kids have gotten burned, or houses have been burned down because of those things. So never leave an open flame unattended. The second thing is, if you feel like you might be falling asleep, I always fall asleep while I'm reading at night. If you feel like you're going to fall asleep, don't leave that candle. Blow it out. Use a flashlight, something like that. And then the third is, this is the interesting one that a lot of people don't think about. Flames consume air. So if you have an open flame in your home, it needs a source of air. Now, our homes, we've worked very hard to make them very airtight, right? That's how we insulate things. That's how we keep ourselves warm in the winter and cool in the summer, is by insulating the outside air. So because of that, we don't have drafty walls and drafty windows and drafty ceilings like pioneers did. We don't have oxygen to feed that flame. So what it does is it consumes all the air that we need. So you must be very careful if you have an open flame in your home that you must crack a window or 2 and make sure that there's enough oxygen coming in, or otherwise you will die from that deadly thing called carbon monoxide poisoning, and you will not know it. But your neighbors will find you dead the next morning. So make sure if you have any open flame that you are leaving a window cracked so that it will feed the flame, because the flame needs oxygen to continue to burn. You've probably heard about the injuries of women in pioneer days, that there were a lot of injuries from their long skirts getting caught in the flames of their cooking fires. So we are so unaccustomed to fires, except for Boy Scouts and them almost dying on both Boy Scout camps. I was always terrified to send my boys. I never knew it was going to happen on those campouts. So other than Boy Scouts almost dying, we've never had probably real up-close personal experiences with flames. So if this is something we're having to do, we need to be very cautious about it. Let's talk about a heat source first of all. If you have an older home, you may be fortunate to have a wood fireplace in your home, which is wonderful. Of course, I don't have a wood fireplace, I have a gas fireplace. As long as the gas is working and I could use a match to ignite it, it would probably burn. But in any kind of a long-term disaster situation, that gas pipeline is going to be shut off as well. I'm not going to be able to use that fireplace. So it might look beautiful, but it's really quite useless to me. So you might need to come up with some kind of an alternate heat source. I have a kerosene heater that I use. It's quite stinky, and it doesn't heat a very wide area. But if we needed to use it, we would use it. We would make sure to crack a window for sure, because it has a lot of fumes coming off of that. There's propane stoves. Coleman stoves, which are the kind that you cook over, are not to be used inside your house. Do not use that kind of stove inside your house. The other idea is you can actually get a freestanding wood stove that you can chimney or vent out a window, and that's what I have. I have a freestanding wood stove and a little insert that I can put in a window so that I can put a chimney out and it'll exhaust outside. It wouldn't heat a very large area, so we've talked about it. If anything like that happens, we'll all be sleeping together in a big happy slumber party, because that body heat and everything else will keep us warm, and we wouldn't be using our whole house. So that's another thing to think about. If you do have an emergency and you're trying to keep warm, close doors. Close off every room that could be taking the heat that you are trying to keep where you are. Think about, again, pioneers, little tiny cabins. How big were those one-room cabins? Honestly, they were probably the best thing for heat retention that they could have done, was to have a small little one-room cabin. We have these humongous houses that we heat. Well, if we have a little tiny kerosene heater heating it, it's not going to heat our whole house. So we would all snuggle up together, we would sleep together, we would work, we'd probably sleep and eat and cook and all in the same area, because all that heat would be shared. If you're trying to keep cool, you're trying to actually do the opposite probably. Open up doors, open up windows, see if you can get some movement through. Go to your coldest area, which in our house is the basement. Water is a great way to cool things, so you can actually hang wet sheets from doorways, and if you have a moving airflow through that doorway, that is a natural air conditioner. So just keep wetting sheets, hang them from a doorway, and it'll naturally air condition the room you're in. All right, let's talk about light some. So there's a lot of different sources for light, so we're going to talk about a few of them. Candles are great, and candles are a great first place to go for, you can light it and you can leave it. Not unattended, obviously, but, it'll burn for a while. Here's the interesting part, though. To read, you need 2 candles going. For a typical medium-sized room, which is, this medium-sized room, not including that big piece over there, you're going to need 6 to 8 candles. That's a lot of candles, and that is going to feel a lot less light than what you're used to feeling. So we're going to have to get used to having things in the dark. We're so used to all these bright lights everywhere, but 2 candles for reading, 6 to 8 candles to do much else. Candles, you really need to have a place that will catch the wax. Otherwise, again, you can start fires or get burns. Candles are cheap. These I got at a thrift store. There's always things like this sitting around in thrift stores. Cheap and easy to store, so I suggest having some candles in storage. Kerosene or oil lamps. These are smelly and they're sooty. They work, and this is what pioneers depended on a lot, but this is an expendable resource. This lamp oil, once this is gone, this is gone. So I have some on hand, but it's certainly not going to be my primary source of light. Solar, this is a wonderful source because this is renewable. Just like this will run out, solar, as long as we can see the sun, it's renewable. So this is solar, this is solar. I have a lot of flashlights that have a solar component as well. You stick them out in the sun and it recharges it. They're not going to be as bright as what you're used to, but it's light. So I like having some solar components. And then just traditional flashlights, traditional lanterns. This one's a combo, but it can be a traditional lantern as well, battery powered. And I always recommend having some kind of a headlight, because when you're doing things without light, we have animals, and when we go out in the winter time and we're trying to work with them, we have to use headlights because we need our hands. We're milking, we're feeding, we can't hold a flashlight because we basically made it so we can't do the job that we need to do. So make sure you have a hands-free light source as well. This is a lighting kit that I made up as gifts for people, and I think it's great. It has a whole bunch of different lighting sources in it. This is something that you could easily keep in a kitchen cabinet somewhere that's easily accessible. So in here I have an emergency candle or survival candle. This is 36 hours this will burn. A regular flashlight, some matches. I wanted to talk about matches. It's important if you're storing matches to get strike anywhere matches. The reason that's important is because if I lose this box, or if this box, you know how this wears out sometimes, you can still strike it on people do it on their zipper, on a brick, on something like that. So strike anywhere matches, that's what I have inside of this kit as well. I have a solar lantern. The reason people really like this solar lantern is it will also charge your electronics. So if the electricity's out, I can stick this out in the sun, I can plug my cell phone into it, and it will recharge it. So teenagers are all over that. This is a wind-up flashlight. So in a case of an emergency, if you are out of batteries, this one will continually work. So you wind it up, and the light comes on. So that's a non-expendable resource right there, something that won't go away. And then chemical light sticks. One really good use for chemical light sticks is if you are in a closed space. Remember how we talked about you had to have a draft of some sort? If you have to be in a closed space, you can't open a window, you know it's airtight, and you need some light, this is your go-to, because you can use that and it will not take oxygen to do. So the lighting kit has a variety of different things. It's nice, like I said, to keep in a cupboard, so in case you have a power outage, you just need a little something. So that's light. Let's talk a little bit about fire starting to finish this up. This is an emergency fire starting kit, and I talked about this with our 72-hour kit video as well. This is just some basic things to start a fire. I love to have this on hand, again, just like in a kitchen cabinet. So if we need to start a fire, if we need to light that candle, if we need to do something, we have everything we need to do that. Couple basic tips on fire starting. Keep it small and simple. Those big old bonfires that you see people having, that's not an emergency fire. Think of the Indian rule. Remember the Indian rule? You could never see the Native American rule. You could never see the smoke of their fire, because they would sit close to their fire and they would do everything they needed, and they would use very little wood, and it was simple to start. The big bonfires, you can't stand very close. It uses a lot of your expendable resource, which is your wood. So small and simple. Have a fire kit for starting at home. And unlike the Boy Scout days, you do not need a propellant. You do not need any kind of fire starter, lighter fluid, anything like that. You just need to be able to learn how to, you just need to be able to know how to start a fire. So hopefully someone in your home does. I think it's a skill that if we ever have to do it, we'll be very good at learning, and we'll all have to learn and get better at it. So that's the details about fire, about light and heat. Again, like I've said before, don't get overwhelmed. I just want you to pick one thing. You can say, okay, I need a few more candles. Let's get a few more candles. Or, hey, I think it would be really cool to have a solar something. So just buy one solar thing. Just pick one or two ways to provide light to your family if you need it. And then I really do want you to think about that alternative heat source. What am I going to do if I need to keep my family warm? So those are the two things I want you to focus on for this month. And we'll be prepared for light and heat needs. Thank you so much. We'll see you next month.